Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the hidden chambers of ancient Egypt. Why it sucked to be an Egyptian concubine, a life that seemed filled with perfume, jewels and luxury, but behind closed doors was pressure, fear and endless performance. In this slow story we'll follow a concubine's day, from the first sound of footsteps before dawn, to the careful rituals of beauty, to the silent battles fought over figs and dates at the breakfast table. Then we'll explore the life of Queen Tiye, the powerful woman who rose from the countryside to the highest throne of influence. We'll uncover the secrets of harems, conspiracies whispered in papyrus, and the shadowy spaces of palaces. Finally, we'll reflect on the contrast between gilded captivity and the freedom of the elite outside. So lie back, let the sleepy historian guide you, and allow this boring history for sleep to carry you gently into the night. If you enjoy these calm, detailed journeys through the past, make sure to like, subscribe, and join Historian Sleepy 365 for more. Now close your eyes and let's begin. Outside, the sky has yet to fully brighten. The deep blue of night is being sliced into thin slivers by a pale gold line along the horizon. The Nile lies still as a dark mirror, rippling only when a lone heron drifts slowly across its surface. In the harem of the royal palace, sleep has not yet ripened into waking before the sound of a servant's sandals begins to echo, light as wind, yet sharp as a reminder that morning waits for no one, not even the one the Pharaoh has never once glanced at. You open your eyes, not because you wish to, but because of a soft, yet firm voice at your ear. Ma'am, it's time. It is not an invitation, nor is it a question. Here, each day begins not with the sun, but with the schedule of those who are allowed to observe you before you are allowed to observe yourself. The blanket is pulled back. The linen is slightly rough, the kind of luxury you had never seen back in your village, but which has now become so ordinary you barely notice it. There is no moment to roll over or blink yourself awake. The instant you sit up, a bronze mirror is placed into your hands. It is cold, reflecting a face still faintly swollen from sleep, and the eyes of the servant standing there to judge whether today you will be enough or lacking. In the harem, morning is not a time for leisure. It is more like a quality inspection, and you are the product. First comes your complexion. Is it pink enough to suggest freshness, or pale as though you had drunk from the Nile in flood season? Then your eyes. Are there shadows beneath them, or merely a slight puffiness that must be hidden? Even the way you sit is noted. If your back curves, the reminder comes immediately. Sit straight, like the statue of the goddess Hathor. The servant adjusts the strap of your dress, a gesture so light it could be mistaken for care, but it is a warning. Here, imperfection is not simply a flaw of beauty, it is reason enough to sink you to the bottom of the list, where names are rarely spoken except during roll call. Outside, the birds are louder now, sparrows, kingfishers, and sometimes the beat of an ibis wings, a sacred bird in the Egyptian faith. From the courtyard drifts the scent of lotus, mixed with the faintly sharp smell of grass, still wet with dew. These are rare comforts in the morning, but you are not permitted to linger in them. Another servant approaches, placing in your hands a thin cloth soaked in cool water from an earthen jar. It is not for washing your face, only to press gently against your eyelids to ward off swelling. In this moment, you realize you have not spoken a single word. In the harem, morning begins in silence, because the first voice you hear will be someone else's judgment of you, not your own. Across the room, a group of other consorts are also waking, each in her own posture, yet all sharing one thing, a quick, sideways glance at the others. No one speaks, but everyone is assessing. You know this because you are doing it too. Comparison never sleeps here, not even before your feet touch the floor. Then comes the posture test. A small wooden tray is brought to you upon which sits a ceramic bowl filled with fragrant water. You rise, place the bowl on your head, and walk a few slow circles around the room. This is no game, it is training. To keep the back straight, the neck high, the step light. One drop spilled is one mark against the grace you must maintain for the rest of the day. The servants say nothing, but their eyes record every clumsy move. By now, light has poured through the window frame. The Egyptian sun is not gentle. It floods in as if to erase every shadow still clinging to the room. You know that in this light, every flaw will show, from the faint scar on your hand to the stray hair you failed to smooth away. Another servant brings a small plate, a few dates, a slice of fig, and a sprinkle of roasted sesame. Breakfast is not meant to fill you. It is part of the visual script, eating just enough to keep your figure, chewing slowly enough to keep your charm. No one forbids you from being hungry. But if you eat too quickly, you will be seen as greedy. If you refuse, you will be thought of as pretending. Here, even the way you bite into fruit can become a story retold at lunch. As you raise the date to your lips, another voice leans in. Today, remember to keep your back straight when you pass through the Eastern Hall. The light there will suit the color of your eyes. You do not ask why light is valued more than greeting. You have long understood, in the harem, beauty is full-time work, and everything else is secondary. Outside, the Nile has begun to truly brighten. Sunlight scatters in golden patches that dance across the stone walls. In the village, you once thought this light meant freedom. Here, it is only a reminder. A new day has begun, and you must be ready for a selection that never ends. And so your morning, the morning of a consort in the royal palace of Egypt, begins. Not with dreams, not with a warm greeting, but with inspection of your face, your posture, and even your breath. You have not yet stepped beyond the room, but the contest is already underway. In the harem, the idea of washing your face goes far beyond clearing away the dust of sleep. It is a ritual, a performance that begins the moment your feet touch the cool stone floor and ends only when every trace of a waking human being has been replaced by a polished version, smooth, fragrant, and beyond reproach, and beyond. A servant leads you out of the room, along a corridor where the first light of morning falls in patches, casting soft gold over painted lotus flowers and sacred birds on the walls. You walk slowly, not to admire the view, but to keep from loosening the hair, just arranged. The air is moist, carrying a faint breath of perfumed oil, telling you the bathing chamber is near. The harem's bath is unlike those in the streets outside. There is no calling of vendors, no clatter of water poured in haste. It is an enclosed space paved with pale stone. At its center, a low limestone basin already prepared. The surface scattered with white lotus petals and a few blue ones, arranged as though someone were building a floating painting. The water is neither too hot nor too cold, just enough that the skin will not rise in gooseflesh when touched. You step in, the sound of water lifting softly. The lotus scent is not merely for pleasure. In ancient Egypt, the lotus is a symbol of rebirth and purity. To soak in this water is to be renewed each morning, a rite no different from the ceremonies of the temple. Two servants begin the cleansing. Instead of soap, they use natron, a natural mineral salt drawn from lakeshore deposits, its grains fine yet sharp, enough to strip away dead skin and any thought of comfort. Their hands work over each part of you, neither hurried nor slow, as though polishing a statue made of flesh. You stay still, for any reaction, even the smallest shiver, could be judged as lacking endurance, a quality no one praises here. Once the skin is smooth, comes the removal of hair. In the harem, the divine ideal allows no hair but that on the head and brows. The servants prepare a mixture of beeswax and oil, warmed until pliant, then spread with a wooden stick. The heat sinks in, the scent of wax blending with the lotus. A breath in, and the strip of linen is pulled away. The soft snap leaves a brief sting and a surface now bare. You do not ask how many times this will be repeated. Here, the number doesn't matter, only the result. Next comes almond oil. A small ceramic jar holds the thick, golden liquid, sweet in scent. The almonds come from far lands, pressed into oil to guard the skin against Egypt's dry sun. A servant pours it into her hands, spreads it slowly along your arms, your calves, your shoulders. This is both care and polish. When light strikes, the skin must catch it like a gemstone, but never gleam with excess. It is a balance only practice can keep. While the oil sinks in, another unspoken rule is repeated. Your personal scent must blend with the shared scent of the harem. If today's dominant note is lotus, you may not choose lavender or resin. Fragrance here is not private preference, it is an invisible uniform. Together the women must be like a carefully bound bouquet, each flower beautiful, yet none overpowering the rest. You are guided to sit on a low stool, back straight, hands resting lightly on your knees. This posture lets the oil absorb evenly without creasing the robe you will wear next. But it is also training for the spine, the neck, and the will to endure. For you will sit this way, unmoving, long enough to think of all the things you cannot change, whether the Pharaoh will come today, who will be seen, and whether a passing glance could be enough to alter a fate. A final servant inspects your hair. If needed, she will dampen the wooden comb with a trace of scented oil, smoothing each strand and setting it in place. In the harem, hair is not merely the frame for the face, it is the opening line of a visual story, the part where eyes might linger before traveling down to the artfully lined gaze or the carefully painted mouth. When all is done, a thin white cloth is draped around you to move on to the next stage, makeup and adornment. But even leaving the bath, the ritual is not over. You walk slowly, almond oil leaving a faint sheen in the light along the hallway. Each step does more than carry you to the dressing table. It reminds you that from this moment on, every gesture is part of the image. And so, before the morning is halfway through, you have already spent over an hour preparing, not to work, not to speak, but to appear as an idealized version of yourself. In the harem, that is no luxury, it is duty. The dressing table in the harem is not a small corner with a few jars of clay. It is more like the workbench of an alchemist, where each jar, each tray, each brush carries a political purpose disguised with the form of art. Light from the window is softened through a thin linen curtain, enough to keep the room from dimming, yet never so bright as to dazzle the eyes. It is the gentle light artisans believe makes a coal line more precise. You sit on the low stool, back straight, shoulders drawn slightly back. A servant approaches with the coal jar. This black powder, ground from galena, a lead mineral, is both cosmetic and charm. The Egyptians believe it shields the eyes from the glaring sun and from the evil eye. But in the harem, it serves another purpose. It can turn your gaze into a weapon. The brush is dipped in coal, its tip just moist enough to hold the powder, then drawn in a fine line along the lid, from the inner corner to the outer, lifting slightly at the end. The stroke not only lengthens the eye, but creates the illusion of confidence, of a secret held behind the black. You sit still, blinking only when told. Every tremor of their hand can change the expression you will wear today. And here, an expression can matter more than any spoken word. Next comes the lips. Red in Egypt does not come from roses or fruit, but from the crushed bodies of tiny cochineal insects mixed with wax and oil. The scent is faintly sweet, faintly sharp, and you know it will cling to your lips for hours. When the color is brushed on, your face gains a vivid point of focus, as though you had just sipped pomegranate wine. But this is not only beauty. In a place where every gesture is read as a message, the lips can say, "I am ready to be noticed," or "I know how to play by the rules." A small ivory comb is brought forward. The servant uses it to brush your brows, not to reshape them, but to keep each hair in its place. Eyebrows here must be neither too thin nor too thick. They are the border of a wall painting, enough to frame, but never to overpower. When needed, a touch of brown mineral powder evens them out, and sometimes a few stray hairs are plucked away. You know each detail will be caught by the eyes in this room, and by eyes far more powerful. With the face finished, it is time for other signs of rank. A wooden tray is placed before you, holding necklaces, bracelets, earrings. You do not choose them yourself. Each piece has already been decided by the day of the week, the ceremony ahead, and sometimes by your standing within the harem. A string of red carnelian beads is clasped around your neck, each one catching the filtered light. Thin gold bracelets encircle your wrists, giving a soft chime when you move, a sound subtle enough to announce your nearness without being seen. The last servant sets a linen band across your hair, its edges embroidered with lotus. Not a crown, but a quiet sign that today you will be seen by more people than usual. With it, a drop of scented oil, myrrh, cinnamon, and a trace of frankincense is placed at the crown of your head to release its fragrance whenever you bow or turn. In the harem, scent is not only seduction, it marks where you stand on the invisible ladder. While waiting for everything to settle, you look into the bronze mirror. The reflection is no longer the woman who woke at dawn. This is a creation shaped by other hands built from minerals, metals, and intent. You realize that each of these things, the coal, the red lips, the jewelry, the oil, can be read as a political statement. They speak of you, but also to others, about your position, your ambitions, and the limits you are not allowed to cross. The servant steps back, studying you as though checking a finished piece of work. A nod. It is done. But you know done here only means ready. Ready for another round of examinations, this time outside the room, where every eye can become a measure of your worth. You rise. The bracelets chime softly with the movement. The coal is still warm on your lids. The red on your lips has dried to a smooth layer. Almond oil glints on your skin, and the faint resin scent follows you like a shadow. And so, the final step of the morning's preparation is complete. You have not only been adorned, you have been armed, ready to step into a day where every glance, every smile, every lowered head may be a move in the harem's unending game of chess. Breakfast in the harem is not a moment of ease. It is more like a closed meeting, where everyone eats, but no one truly enjoys. On the table lie dried dates, soft, ripe figs, bread made from emmer wheat, and small bowls of golden honey. But here, food is only the backdrop for the quiet contests playing out in glances, gestures, and the pace of chewing. The breakfast room is in the eastern wing, where the first sunlight streams in through tall windows, reflecting on the stone floor and making the white ceramic bowls shine even brighter. You enter with several other consorts, all dressed in light linen, hair and ornaments perfected since early morning. The soft chime of bracelets and necklaces blends with the sound of footsteps on stone. Seating is never left to chance. Those closer to the Queen or to higher-ranking consorts are placed nearer the head of the table, within easy reach of conversation with the most powerful person present. You know exactly where you belong, not so far as to be forgotten, but not so near as to invite too much notice. It is a safe position, but it means you must watch more than you speak. When the food is served, the servants move as lightly as shadows. A plate of dried dates is placed before you. They are soft, sweet, neatly cut into mouth-sized pieces. Beside them, a plate of peeled figs, their deep red flesh glistening like garnet, carrying a faint perfume. A bowl of honey sits at the center, its gold inviting, but also reminding you that this is not the place to lose yourself in sweetness. You take a date, raise it slowly to your lips. As your teeth meet the tender flesh, you glance toward the woman opposite. She is speaking to the person beside her, yet her eyes still stray, now and then, toward the head of the table. It is not a random glance. You know well that each look is a check, gauging the reaction of someone there, perhaps the Queen, perhaps a consort enjoying recent favor. The pace of eating here is its own language. Too fast, and you are greedy, lacking restraint. Too slow, and you are accused of posturing, drawing attention. The ideal rhythm is just enough to keep hunger away, yet always ready to join a conversation or answer a sudden question. Compliments at this table are rarely simple. Someone might tilt their head and say, "Your hair shines beautifully today," which could mean that yesterday you look dull. Or if someone praises your bracelet, they may be probing to see who gave it. And from that, guess whether your standing in the harem is rising or slipping. You take a piece of fig, letting the sweetness spread slowly in your mouth. Its soft texture reminds you that everything here is calibrated to be just pleasant enough, but never so comfortable as to make you forget you are in an endless contest. The meal is a chance to watch who has pomegranate wine poured for them first, who is invited to taste a new dish, who laughs at the right time, and who stays silent too long. From time to time, the Queen's eyes, or those of another powerful consort, sweep the table. When that happens, everyone seems to straighten at once, chew more slowly, and release a faint smile. The smile is not for pleasure, but to show you are present, alert, in rhythm, ready to respond if called. Someone near you shares a small story about a dream from the night before. Everyone smiles lightly, not because the story is amusing, but because it is told at the right moment. Here, timing matters more than content. A sentence placed perfectly can be enough to make you remembered when the list is read for who will appear before the Pharaoh today. You sip cool water from a small limestone cup. The faint mineral taste clears your head, but you keep your eyes half-lidded, careful not to seem overly watchful. In this place, sometimes feigning distraction is the best way to gather information. As the meal nears its end, the most important figures rise first. The rest place their hands on the table and wait until they have gone before standing. You do the same, still noting who spoke to whom, who avoided whose eyes, and who, today, went entirely unmentioned. Leaving the dining room, you feel more keenly the compressed air that hung over breakfast. It does not vanish, it only changes shape from the silent battlefield of the table to the corridors filled with footsteps and whispers. You know this game does not end when you leave the table. It merely shifts to another stage where the roles continue until the sun goes down. Most of the time in the harem is not spent in whispered conspiracies or powerful gatherings. Most of the time is spent waiting, but not the kind of waiting where you lounge in a corner with tangled hair and dream-heavy eyes. Here, waiting is an art form, a discipline where you must be fully present yet give off the appearance of effortless beauty, even though every detail is calculated down to the position of your fingertips. The relaxation room lies at the center of the harem, opening onto a small courtyard with a lotus pond and a few low date palms. Light filters through linen curtains, scattering golden stripes across the tiled floor. You choose a place on a long bench draped in white linen, back straight, hands resting lightly on your knees. Not because it is comfortable, but because it holds the curve of your spine and shoulders in the exact form temple painters prefer to carve into stone. A servant brings you a small lute. You do not play for your own amusement, but to add color to the setting. The notes are thin, clear, dissolving into the air, just enough for anyone passing by to hear, but never enough to break the quiet. Each time you tilt your head, your hair falls to one side, revealing the line of your neck, a gesture that seems unconscious, yet has been practiced many times before the bronze mirror. On the low wooden table before you, a vase of lotus releases its gentle sweetness. From time to time, you lift a blossom toward your face, tilting it toward your nose. To an onlooker, it is simple appreciation of the scent. You know it is also a way to keep your wrist and hand poised in elegance, always within the frame of anyone entering the room. At times, you shift by letting one sandal slip halfway off your foot, dangling from your toes. It is not restlessness nor distraction. In a place where every movement can be interpreted, it is a quiet reminder that you are at ease, confident in your place. Someone watching from the far side of the room may notice, and though they say nothing, they will remember it as a small note in their impression of you. In this room, even silence is an ornament. Those who know how to exist beautifully do not fill the space with words. They let others bring the stories, contributing only with a glance, a slight smile. You listen as a consort speaks about a new perfume brought from the south, nodding now and then, smiling softly, but never holding the attention for too long. Another servant enters, carrying a tray of fresh figs and slices of honey cake. You take one, biting slowly. The sweetness spreads on your tongue, yet you keep your gaze a little distant, as if your thoughts are on something far greater than this meal. It is a skill to make others believe you are always engaged in deep reflection, even if you are only counting the times the sparrows crossed the courtyard this morning. In a corner, a young girl is practicing the motion of pouring wine into a cup with her left hand, keeping the flow steady without spilling a drop. You remember practicing the same, not out of fear of being scolded, but because you knew that one day the gesture might take place before the Pharaoh. And in that moment, a single drop spilled could become an accusation of clumsiness. Time moves slowly, yet no one appears impatient. Here, clocks are not measured by the sun or the length of shadows, but by the continuous string of beautiful moments maintained without break. A bird call in the courtyard, a soft gust stirring the curtain, a strand of hair falling to the shoulder, all become details in the living painting you are part of. When footsteps sound in the corridor, everyone sits a little straighter, adjusts their dress, stills any unnecessary motion. It does not matter who is coming. The rule is to always be ready as though it were the most important person. And if it is in fact someone important, then every second of waiting will be read as a quiet declaration, "You know how to exist here." Before she became Queen of Egypt, before her name was carved into granite walls and temple gates, Tiye was simply a girl from the rural south, where the Nile curved past pale gold wheat fields and rows of tall date palms. She was born in Akhmim, a provincial town in Upper Egypt, far from the stone-paved palaces and massive columns of Thebes, the royal capital. It was not a land of royalty, but neither was it an anonymous poor village. Tiye's family held respect in their community. Her father, Yuya, was a high-ranking official in military affairs and the management of war horses, while her mother, Chuyu, was deeply tied to religious life, particularly the rites devoted to the goddess Hathor. This gave Tiye an unusual foundation. She was not of royal blood, yet grew up close enough to power to understand its rules and far enough to see its shadows. Her childhood was not spent among gold or silks, but between the pounding of hooves on sand, the ceremonial music of the temple, and the resin-scented smoke curling up from oil lamps during rituals. She learned to handle a horse from a young age, a rare skill for women of the time, and to read basic hieroglyphs from the stone stele in Hathor's sanctuary. Perhaps it was this blend, the discipline of her father, the refinement of her mother, that made Tiye stand out. She knew not only how to bow to power, but how to observe and remember the details others overlooked. Those who knew her as a young woman recalled her unusual gaze, bright but not with carefree youth, bright with the sense of always weighing, always measuring. When she smiled, her lips curved softly, but her eyes kept a quiet focus. In a countryside where most were content with harvest festivals and cool river winds, Tiye always seemed to be waiting for something greater. It is said that during a Hathor festival, when the royal entourage passed through Akhmim, Tiye caught the eye of those within the court. Not solely for her beauty, though her thick black hair and warm bronze skin were striking, but for the way she held her back straight and met another's gaze directly. In an age when women, especially those outside the royal line, were expected to lower their eyes and keep their distance, Tiye radiated an uncommon confidence, as if she already belonged in the rooms where the fate of the nation was decided. Stories of how she was brought to court differ. Some say she was invited to serve as an honorary attendant to a young princess, giving her a chance to be present at royal ceremonies. Others believe that Amenhotep III, then still a prince, met Tiye during a journey and was immediately impressed. However it happened, one thing is certain. Tiye entered the palace not as an ornament, but as someone who knew how to seize opportunity. Even in her youth, she understood that beauty might open the first door, but only intelligence and the ability to read people would keep it from closing. In the palace, she had to learn the rules of an entirely different world. In Akhmim, people knew one another, and relationships rested on community trust. In Thebes, everything was decided by where you sat, the colors you wore, and whose name was spoken at banquets. Tiye quickly realized that every greeting, every tilt of the head, every touch to a wine cup carried hidden meaning. Instead of letting herself be drawn into petty rivalries and whispered slanders, she chose to watch in silence. She spoke little, but when she did, her words landed precisely, leaving listeners unable to forget them. This gradually turned her from a provincial girl into a figure both intriguing and quietly feared within the court. It is often said that the greatest power is the power to make others wonder. What is she thinking? And Tiye, from a young age, had already mastered that. By the time Amenhotep III ascended the throne, she was not just another beautiful consort among many. She was a deliberate choice, a royal wife without royal blood, yet with the intellect, tact, and family standing to strengthen the king's position. But to rise from a girl in Akhmim to Queen of Egypt, Tiye would have to pass through many layers of trial. The pressure of ceremonial appearances, the scrutiny of the nobility, and the whispers about how a commoner could sit beside the pharaoh on the throne. The story of those years, from her first days in the palace to the moment she became queen, reveals why Tiye not only endured, but rose to become one of the most powerful women in ancient Egyptian history. If Tiye's first step into the palace was a narrow door she skillfully slipped through, then her marriage to Amenhotep III was like a colossal stone gateway, one that opened onto a world of power but could crush anyone who passed without the strength to stand firm. Amenhotep III was not just pharaoh. He embodied an era of prosperity. When Egypt reached the peak of wealth, trade expanded from the Near East to Nubia, and grand architectural projects rose as if competing with the Nile's flowing current. A man like him could not choose a wife based on beauty alone. His marriage had to be an alliance, a strategic move, and Tiye, daughter of Yuya and Chuyu, a woman without royal blood but carrying the wisdom of a natural politician, became the perfect choice. Historical records still debate the exact timing of their wedding, but it is likely Tiye was still a teenager when she officially became queen. The wedding was not just a religious ceremony, but a political declaration. When the pharaoh named Tiye Great Royal Wife, he broke an unspoken rule. Queens were usually expected to be of royal lineage. The famous stela at Sedeinga in Nubia clearly states this. Tiye's name was inscribed alongside the king's, an almost unprecedented act. It was more than a symbol of love, though that cannot be ruled out. It was a message to the entire empire. This woman needs no bloodline to hold power. Her power comes from her own ability. On the wedding day, Thebes must have shone brighter than usual. Ceremonial boats drifted down the Nile, carrying wooden chests filled with gold, gems, and offerings from across the empire. Tiye stepped ashore in a pristine white linen dress embroidered with gold thread, her hair braided tightly against her head, adorned with thin gold plates like dragonfly wings. She wore no excessive jewelry. It was this restraint that made her stand out amid a sea of others vying to shine. The marriage instantly changed Tiye's position. She was no longer a face in the harem, no longer seated at the back during ceremonies. Now she stood beside the pharaoh in reliefs, her name carved alongside his in diplomatic letters sent to the kings of Mitanni, Babylon, and the Hittites. Tiye's role was not merely ceremonial. She welcomed foreign delegations, acted as advisor to Amenhotep III on many diplomatic matters. The famous Amarna letters even preserve instances where vassal kings addressed letters directly to Tiye, a rarity for an Egyptian queen. Yet power never comes without challenges. The presence of a commoner queen like Tiye surely unsettled many nobles. Those of royal blood who had hoped a marriage would secure their standing now witnessed a woman from the countryside rise to stand on equal footing, and in many cases above them. Tiye understood this. She did not seek direct confrontation, but chose a subtler path to become an indispensable part of the power structure. She appeared beside the pharaoh on important occasions, yet knew when to retreat to the background. She bestowed gifts upon temples, supported religious ceremonies, and maintained relationships with both clergy and the military. Their marriage also reflected a delicate balance between personal and political. Had she relied on beauty alone, Tiye would have been a fleeting symbol, quickly replaced by a younger face. But she transformed their union into a strategic partnership, an alliance where both reinforced each other's status. The early years of their marriage were likely a golden age. Amenhotep III at the height of his power. Grand projects like the Luxor Temple underway, Egypt the commercial center of the region. Tiye, as queen, not only witnessed but helped shape this era. But, as in every story of power, behind the light were shadows. Whenever Tiye entered a great hall, she carried not just beauty and grace, but the gaze of dozens seeking a sign of weakness, a small mistake, an opportunity to bring her down. And she knew that a single slip could turn her from queen to a name erased from stone. It was this vigilance that allowed Tiye to survive, and beyond that, to leave a lasting mark in history. Her marriage to Amenhotep III did more than lift her from a girl in Akhmim to the pinnacle of power. It gave her a stage to prove that a woman's power need not come from bloodline, but can come from intelligence, tact, and the ability to read what others do not say. In the deep limestone reliefs of the temples, Tiye often appears standing beside Amenhotep III, sometimes a step behind, sometimes side by side. But her true power rarely showed itself in such public places. It lived in the spaces no one could touch, behind the curtains of the harem, in small rooms where only the king, a few trusted officials, and the whispers of negotiations gathered. In a court where every decision could affect thousands of lives, who was allowed near the pharaoh as he deliberated was a massive advantage. Tiye did not just stand close, she knew when to speak and when to remain silent. It was a power that needed no trumpet, just a few soft words, like a thin blade slicing through layers of silk. Today's historians can trace Tiye's influence through surviving diplomatic letters. The Amarna correspondence, clay tablets inscribed with cuneiform, reveal a rare truth. Vassal kings and foreign princes wrote not only to Amenhotep III, but also directly to Tiye. What does this mean? That they believed she held enough power to influence the king, that they saw her as a gateway to the center of Egyptian authority. In these letters, Tiye is mentioned not only as a wife, but as an independent political figure. After Amenhotep III's death, some foreign kings continued to correspond with Tiye, asking her to act as mediator and maintain alliance stability. This was no role for a decorative queen. Tiye's power also showed in religious policy. She was not only patron to the temples of Hathor and Isis, but skillfully used religion to bolster her own standing. In an era when the king was seen as the embodiment of Horus, Tiye crafted an image of herself as the high priestess, the only one able to connect Pharaoh with the goddesses. This not only raised her prestige among the people, but created a political shield. Attacking Tiye was tantamount to attacking a part of divine power. It is important to remember that Tiye lived in a time when Egypt had many royal wives and consorts, some from foreign political alliances. Their presence meant silent rivalries. But Tiye did not allow herself to be drawn into petty games. She held control over the harem, a position both powerful and perilous, and turned it into a tool for managing information. For at court, information was currency. Who visited the pharaoh, who was granted audience, who was refused, the one who knew controlled the rhythm of power. She also influenced foreign policy by selecting and supporting key officials. Appointments of ambassadors, generals, or tax collectors depended not only on the pharaoh's trust, but also on the agreement, or at least the tacit consent, of the queen. Tiye understood that lasting power does not come from fleeting outbursts, but from placing the right people in the right places, then letting them form a network of loyalty revolving around her. And perhaps most strikingly, Tiye became a symbol of female intellect in the eyes of the people. Her image appeared on luxury goods, from jewelry to pottery, not only as a beauty icon, but as the wise advisor to Pharaoh. It is said that in some rural areas, Women named their daughters after Tiye, hoping they would grow up smart and strong like the queen. But power behind the curtain always came with loneliness. Tiye could influence great decisions, yet could not always claim credit openly. At ceremonies, the pharaoh was hailed, while she smiled softly, fingers resting on the hem of her linen robe, as if merely fulfilling a duty. She knew that too much light could make her a target. This subtlety is why Tiye survived many upheavals, including the profound religious changes under her son Akhenaten. When traditional gods were replaced by the worship of Aten, Tiye did not openly resist, but maintained her network of influence to protect what she believed was Egypt's foundation. Within the harem, where soft curtains separated the inside world from the outside, Tiye created a parallel court, quieter, more refined, yet no less powerful. She proved that sometimes you need not sit on the throne to move the pieces on the board. In the gilded palace of Thebes, no wall was ever truly silent. Every inscribed stone, every silk curtain, every servant passing through the halls could become an eye, an ear, and sometimes a dagger. Tiye understood this better than anyone. She entered the royal court as an outsider, earning the title of queen, not by bloodline, but by sharp intellect. Yet this very fact made her a thorn in many sides. Nobles of royal descent, powerful ancient families, even consorts with foreign ties, all had reasons to wish Tiye displaced. Threats did not always come from beyond the borders. They often began as whispers in the dark, words carelessly dropped into the ears of others. Some spread rumors of Tiye's abuse of power, accusing her of overreaching in governance. Others sowed doubt about her family's loyalty, especially since her father once held wide commercial ties, including with lands considered controversial. But Tiye was not the kind to wait until attacked to respond. She wielded the very weapon her enemies used against her, a network of information. She maintained a circle of loyal attendants, not mere servants, but gatherers of news from every shadowed corner of the palace. Through them, she always knew when a plot was forming, and more importantly, who was behind it. When she identified an enemy, Tiye did not rush to strike immediately. She knew a revealed foe was sometimes safer than a hidden one. Instead, she weakened them gradually, pushing them from positions of influence, disrupting their support, or occupying them with honorary tasks that held no real power. Surviving diplomatic letters show Tiye remained central even during turbulent times. When some vassals complained of trade injustice or requested military aid, they wrote to her, believing her voice could sway the pharaoh's will. This meant that whether enemies liked it or not, they had to acknowledge her authority. In religion, Tiye refused to be sidelined. Though her son Akhenaten began reshaping Egypt's faith to worship Aten alone, she stayed an advisor and mediator. By showing just enough support, she avoided open conflict, maintaining ties with both old and new factions. It was a risky but necessary strategy. Choosing a side too early could cost everything when tides turned. She also knew power extended beyond the palace. Tiye kept close relations with temples, especially in her hometown Akhmim, where she remained a local pride. She sponsored religious projects, offered gifts, and ensured her name was carved on stelae alongside praises. These marks were like anchors, binding her to the loyalty of the people, even when storms rose in the royal court. But power carried a price. Late at night, after the curtains were drawn, Tiye likely wondered who was friend and who awaited her misstep. Every gaze held a question, every unfamiliar greeting a signal. She had to maintain constant vigilance, a fatigue unseen by others, yet always present. What set Tiye apart was her ability to turn that vigilance into strength. She refused to let anxiety paralyze her, using it instead as fuel to stay one step ahead. In a world where power could be lost in a single morning, Tiye endured for decades. And not merely endured, but shaped the politics and culture of Egypt itself. She stood as living proof of a principle of power. It is not always the one seated on the throne who controls the board. Sometimes it is the one behind the curtain, silently watching, who writes the decisive moves. More than 3,000 years have passed since Tiye left her world behind. The walls she once walked through have crumbled or been swallowed by the desert sands, and the whispers within the harem now only stir the wind through the crevices of Thebes' stones. Yet somehow Tiye still lingers. Perhaps the clearest image of her remains in the ebony statue displayed at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. That face is not an idealized vision, like many royal sculptures. The eyes are long and narrow, the lips thin, cheekbones high, features strong. There is none of the softness of a goddess statue. This is the face of a real woman, one who endured power, intrigue, and time. Scholars believe this realism was a deliberate choice, meant to convey her strength and character rather than abstract beauty. Though faded by centuries, the statue still holds traces of deep red paint on the skin and glossy black on the wig. In dim light, the quartz eyes seem to watch silently but thoughtfully, much like she once observed her court. Beyond the images, Tiye left her mark in diplomatic correspondence. Clay tablets from Amarna record letters she sent and received from vassal kings and foreign princes. Some letters offer polite diplomacy, others subtle refusals, and some are direct requests for gold, soldiers, or political guarantees. These documents show not only that she was respected as a political figure on par with male rulers, but also reflect her skill in managing complex international relations in an era when women's roles were often limited. To archaeologists, Tiye is both familiar and mysterious. Familiar because we have more direct traces of her than most other Egyptian queens. Mysterious because large gaps remain in her story, her early years before the palace, her true personal relationships, and her role in the religious upheavals during Akhenaten's reign. Many theories exist. Some see her as a stabilizing mediator during the collapse of traditional religion. Others believe she quietly supported religious reform. But as with all great power, truth often lies hidden beneath layers of interpretation. Later generations remember Tiye in many ways. In Egyptian texts, she is praised as the king's official wife, his beloved, revered before the gods. In modern culture, she inspires novels, documentaries, and artworks that recreate the golden age of the 18th dynasty. Feminists see in her a symbol of women's ability to wield political power even within an absolute patriarchy. Some scholars even compare Tiye to figures like Eleanor of Aquitaine in medieval Europe, women who were not merely kings' wives but central players in diplomacy and culture. This comparison is not meant to diminish her uniqueness, but to highlight that women's soft power and subtle strategy have always existed throughout history, even if not always fully recorded. When we look at Tiye's legacy, her statues, letters, stele, and even faint legends, we realize that true power need not be tied to the throne or battlefield victories. It can live in quiet moments, in whispered conversations, in shaping others' wills without leaving clear traces. Perhaps this is why Tiye is still remembered. She is proof that history is not only written by those who wield swords, but also by those who know how to set the board. And sometimes such people leave marks longer lasting than the most celebrated warriors. If you could walk through a royal palace of New Kingdom Egypt, the first impression might not be awe, but a carefully measured silence. The tall walls, coated in white plaster, were thick enough that the midday sun slipped only through narrow slits, casting shadows and light like the tight passages of a giant hourglass. This design was not only to keep the heat out, but to control sightlines, guide footsteps, and most importantly, keep everything within watchful eyes. The harem, or the residence of royal women, was not a single room, but a complex area, connected yet separate from the rest of the palace. Archaeologists reconstructing palaces like Malkata, where Amenhotep III and Queen Tiye once lived, have found this layout always revolves around a dual principle: isolation and connection. Long corridors, often winding, led to private courtyards. Here, royal women could walk, sunbathe, or talk, but entrances were guarded by thick wooden doors, carved with patterns and sometimes sealed with clay stamps bearing royal seals. These seals were not only barriers to intrusion, but reminders that every movement left a trace, every step could be recorded. The building materials of the harem reflected the goals of temperature control and security. Sun-baked mud bricks coated with reflective white plaster, ceilings made of wood and palm fronds, sometimes painted blue to evoke the sky. Certain special rooms, like the Queen's Chamber, were decorated with murals showing gardens, lotus ponds, and birds, creating a sense of closeness to nature while subtly marking the occupant's power. Interestingly, though designed to be separate, the harem was never fully closed off. From certain vantage points in the palace, especially observation rooms above, one could look down into the courtyards or corridors of the women's quarters. This allowed a soft form of surveillance, not always present, but enough that everyone knew they might be watched. Secret passageways and private routes for servants were also part of the design. These allowed food, water, clothing, and cosmetics to be delivered without disturbing the quiet of the space. But these paths also served as channels for information exchange. A message slipped into a fruit tray, a whispered note while changing an oil lamp. Archaeologists have found evidence of small compartments inside walls that may have been used to hide valuables or secret messages. Sleeping chambers within the harem were arranged by rank. The Queen's room was spacious, with windows catching the Nile breeze, a wooden bed covered in white linen, and pillows stuffed with goose feathers. The rooms of other consorts were smaller, less decorated, but still clean and well-equipped. Because in a society where appearance was a symbol of power, even the least favored had to maintain a flawless image. One less noticed detail is the placement of baths and washing areas. These were usually located at the edge of the harem, near water sources, designed with simple yet effective drainage systems. Stone floors were sloped so water flowed toward a single point before being carried away. More than hygiene spots, these were social hubs where news and rumors spread quickly, for everyone, from queen to consort, had to pass through. Archaeological evidence suggests that some harems included a small school for the children of royalty and consorts. This means the harem was not only a place of rest or waiting, but also a training center where manners, music, dance, and religion were taught. Thus, its design reflected not only the king's power, but served as a tool to shape the next generation of the royal family. The more we study, the more the harem's architecture appears as a web. Every corridor, door, and hidden corner served a purpose. Spaces not just to live in, but to control, creating the sense that every move was witnessed. And perhaps that is why, for many women in the harem, the palace was more than a home. It was a subtle labyrinth where beauty, power, and confinement intertwined, inseparable. If the architecture of the palace and harem forms the skeleton, then the artifacts unearthed are the remaining veins of life within. They reveal not just a space that once existed, but bear the traces of hands that touched them, habits once performed, and fragments of stories that official texts never recorded. At excavation sites like Malkata, Medinet El Ghorob, and the remnants of Amarna, archaeologists have uncovered fragile papyrus scrolls as brittle as dry leaves. Most have decayed, but some still hold enough writing to be read. One scroll records a list of perfume distributions. Every bottle of almond oil, moringa oil, lotus fragrance meticulously noted alongside the recipient's name. These names were not always queens or princesses. Often they belonged to lower-ranking consorts or close servants. This detail alone reveals a sophisticated network of allocation and favor, where the order in the list reflected one's place in the king's or queen's regard. Other papyri resemble attendance registers or duty rosters. Who was assigned to play the lute in the evening? Who prepared fragrances for the bath chamber? Who offered flowers at the harem's private shrine? Their tone is plain and practical, far from royal proclamations, as if the writer did not imagine these documents would survive 3 millennia. Beyond paper, we find small but evocative objects. A delicate gold bracelet engraved with lotus flowers, a strand of bright red carnelian beads, rings inscribed with the names of gods. Many jewelry pieces found in the harem area appear personal rather than ceremonial, not the solemn adornments worn at festivals, but items given as private gifts or worn daily. This shows that within a world of ritual, moments of intimacy and personal relationships were recorded through tiny objects of metal and stone. Cosmetics and beauty tools form another abundant group of artifacts. Ivory combs remain with their teeth intact, though some are worn down. Alabaster coal jars still hold traces of black powder, found alongside small spoons used to mix and apply it. Wooden boxes contain red lip pigments, likely made from crushed insects mixed with beeswax. Copper razors, pumice stones for smoothing skin, and spoons carved with lotus or bird motifs for scooping ointments have all been discovered. Each piece reveals the refinement of beauty routines and the connection between aesthetics and power in royal life. Especially striking are the fragments of bronze mirrors found, vivid evidence of how royal women saw and judged themselves. Mirrors of that time did not reflect as perfectly as modern glass. Images appeared slightly blurred, shimmering, with a warm metallic glow. When a consort gazed into one, she likely saw not only her present self, but glimpsed through a veil of time, herself as the court and the gods desired her to be. Alongside personal items, some hidden relics have been uncovered. Tiny amulets tucked into walls, miniature deity statues placed beneath floor tiles, or carved bones wrapped in linen. These were not part of official records, perhaps offerings, protective charms, or private reminders never shared aloud. They create a parallel layer of life where private belief existed alongside sanctioned ritual. From an archaeological viewpoint, each object is an open question. A sealed perfume vial might reveal favored scents. A broken-toothed comb could hint at hair care or hair condition. A list of rations might show who was favored or neglected. But from the storyteller's perspective, they do even more. They turn the names etched on stone into real people, with preferences, habits, and moments of vulnerability. When you hold a fragment of bronze mirror once resting on a consort's dressing table 3,000 years ago, you do not only see your own reflection, you see her on a distant morning bending to redraw her eyeliner, wondering if today she will be noticed or forgotten. And perhaps this is archaeology's greatest gift, to transform silent fragments into stories, so voices long extinguished can still whisper beside the listener's ear. If you were to step into a storage room at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo and see a long papyrus scroll, its small, neat writing darkened in places by time, you might be standing before one of the most extraordinary legal documents of the ancient world, the record of the harem conspiracy. This is not merely a tale of palace crime. It is a rare moment when the secrets of the harem were pulled into the light, when those who usually lived behind curtains faced public justice. and when the shadow of power reached the very throne itself. The event took place near the end of Ramses III's reign, around the 12th century BCE. Ramses III was a powerful pharaoh, but his court was under pressure: famine, military conflicts, and shifts in internal power structures. In this context, a woman in the harem named Tiye, a different Tiye than the 14th century queen, conspired with trusted allies and some officials to assassinate the king. Why? The papyrus states the goal was to place Tiye's son on the throne instead of the legitimate heir. But behind this political motive, many scholars believe personal rivalries, factional discontent, and promises of power we may never fully know played a part. Our main sources are the Papyrus Judicial Turin and Papyrus Rollin. They list dozens involved: consorts, eunuchs, military officers. The records do not describe each action in detail, but mainly present accusations, verdicts, and fragments describing the uncovered plot. It reads like a summary of an emergency trial where the full truth is less important than the official version preserved. From what remains, the plot hinged on exploiting an important palace ceremony. The plan seemed to be to kill the pharaoh in a confined space with fewer guards, while the chaos of the ritual concealed the act. Participants included soldiers and servants, showing the depth of infiltration. Interestingly, we do not know how successful the conspiracy was. Modern forensic studies of Ramses III's mummy suggest he may have been throat-slitted or attacked. A 2012 CT scan revealed a deep cut on his neck, implying the plot may have reached its goal. Yet the court claimed the king died naturally and then prosecuted the conspirators. The trial was conducted peculiarly. Judges were appointed directly by the crown prince, who stood to gain most if the conspiracy failed. This fact has led many researchers to question its fairness. Still, sentences were harsh. Many executed, some allowed to take their own lives, their honor erased from royal records. What makes the harem conspiracy extraordinary is not just the political event, but the glimpse it offers into life and motives within the harem. In a society where consorts are often portrayed as passive figures, this case reveals them as powerful political actors, capable of organizing and managing a complex network. It shatters the silent image the harem's architecture suggests, showing beneath the surface waves of ambition and discontent. From an archaeological perspective, this case raises larger questions. We know of it mainly because papyrus scrolls happen to survive the ages, but how many similar plots were wiped from history? And if they existed, how might they reshape our understanding of women's political roles in ancient Egypt? Today, standing before that scroll in its glass case, you see thousands of years old writing still clear. But behind every stroke are whispers, closed doors, and glances exchanged down corridors, all converging on a moment history only calls the harem conspiracy. And like all exposed secrets, it reveals not only guilt, but the nature of humanity, ambition, fear, and the desire to be remembered on one's own terms. If you were to step through the wooden door carved with lotus blossoms into the royal harem on the day of a ceremony, you would immediately sense that everything here is symbolic. No object, no scent, no gesture is meaningless. In the world of the pharaoh, religious meaning and power are inseparable, and the harem is a stage where both are woven into an invisible yet tightly knit tapestry. The lotus is the first symbol you would see. On walls, in the hands of dancers, on stone baths, the lotus appears everywhere. In ancient Egyptian religion, the blue lotus represents rebirth and the sun, for it closes its petals at night and blooms at dawn. A consort holding a lotus is not just a graceful gesture, it is an affirmation that she belongs to the cycle of light and life, and, through it, to the sacred power of the pharaoh. Gold is the second element, and in Egypt it is more than a precious metal. Gold was seen as the flesh of the gods, never tarnishing, never decaying, symbolizing immortality. In ceremonies, golden bracelets, necklaces, or small crowns were not merely adornments, but a way to cloak the body in a divine skin. When sunlight or torchlight strikes that gleam, the wearer becomes a living image of myth. Fragrance, the third element, is what you would sense even before seeing anything. The harem is always filled with scents of myrrh, frankincense, and lotus oils. Fragrance is not just pleasant, it is a bridge between the mortal world and the divine. In Egyptian belief, incense smoke carries prayers and reverence to the gods. When a consort enters a ritual wrapped in scent, she carries a sacred message on her body. Music and dance are indispensable. Harem ceremonies often feature specially trained dancers moving slowly, every motion deliberate. Sometimes senior consorts also participate, especially in rites honoring royal patron goddesses like Hathor or Isis. Each step, each wrist circle carries meaning. Slow rotations represent the moon's cycle, forward steps the sunlight shining on the Nile. At the same time, music from harps, flutes, and hand drums creates a soundscape both enchanting and supplicatory. At grand occasions, rituals include offerings, bread, wine, fruit, and scented oils placed on small altars within the harem. These gifts are not only for the gods but reaffirm the connection between Pharaoh, the royal family, and divine power. Every consort placing an offering pledges loyalty to the king and harmony with the cosmic order he embodies. Some rites are more private, performed only among consorts and priestesses in the harem. In these moments, lotus flowers float in water, gold bracelets are exchanged, and fragrant oils anoint hair, rites of connection and mutual protection. Though not recorded in formal histories, these rituals endure in the memories of participants, for they speak not only of the divine, but also of sisterhood in a place rife with competition. When the ceremony ends, incense still lingers in the room, gold continues to catch the light, and lotus petals scent the water's surface. More importantly, each participant leaves feeling both uplifted and more tightly bound to the web of power. For in the harem, ritual is not merely an act of devotion, it is a way of life and a way to survive. And if you ever have the chance to see a wall painting or artifact from the harem, you will recognize these symbols still remain unchanged, even though the hands that once touched them have long since turned to dust beneath millennia of time. In the long corridors where oil lamps illuminate only fragments of walls painted with lotuses and ibis birds, stories exist that no official record dares to write down. They pass in whispered voices through servants' hands, shielding their mouths, through exchanged glances among consorts as they pass one another. One such tale speaks of a consort known by a name of uncertain origin, the bearer of the moon bracelet. She was neither queen nor famed in public rituals. But rumors said that whenever a great upheaval struck the court, her silver bracelet changed color, shifting from bright to dark, as if reflecting an omen. Some believed she was the daughter of a priestess, gifted with the power to foresee the future. Skeptics claimed it was mere gossip, crafted to make her mysterious, thus safer, in a place rife with competition. Then there is the story of a secret garden within the harem, a small courtyard enclosed by high walls, its gates opened only on full moon nights. It was said to be the secret meeting place of a consort and a young general. When their affair was discovered, the general vanished from all records, and the consort, no one knew where she disappeared. Some whispered she was sent to a distant temple to live as a priestess in atonement. Others murmured that she was buried with a special piece of jewelry to seal the secret forever. Disappearances form part of this hazy tapestry. In the harem, sometimes a roommate stitching beside you one day is gone the next, her bed empty, belongings vanished, and no explanation given. Rumors fill the silence. She offended the queen, she dared meet Pharaoh's gaze, or worse, was suspected of political conspiracy. And as in all places of power, silence often becomes the only way to survive. Many rumors swirl around mysterious prophecies whispered during night ceremonies. One tale tells of a dancer who, mid-performance, uttered strange words, of a river that would change course, of the sun disappearing for 3 days, and of a black lotus blooming in the hand of a stranger. Later, when a great flood altered a branch of the Nile, many recalled her words, but no one knew what the black lotus meant, or to whom it referred. These legends cannot be verified, and perhaps that is why they endure. In a world where every official word must be recorded, every move watched, the unrecorded stories become the freest of all. They slip through time, changing with each teller, each generation in the harem adding a new detail. Today, when archaeologists find a silver bracelet, a shard of pottery painted with a black lotus, or a wall marked by traces of a garden long gone, they can only ask questions. For no verdict, no decree remains, only rumors lingering like the wind through the corridors, faint, elusive, but impossible to silence. And perhaps that is the true power of legend. It survives when truth is buried, still whispering in our ears, even when no one remembers exactly where it began. If you stand at the edge of the harem garden where tall walls block your view, then turn to look toward the cities of Thebes or Memphis, you will see two worlds coexisting but never truly meeting. On one side lies the harem, discreet, protected, luxurious, yet confined. On the other, the expansive estates of free nobility, equally wealthy, equally powerful, but breathing a different air. A consort, though living amid splendor, remains a possession of the pharaoh. All her glory and privileges tie directly to the king's status and favor. The high walls of the harem serve not only to protect, but to separate. She may not walk the streets freely, visit relatives at will, or choose how to spend her time beyond rituals and unspoken rules. Even if she is the pharaoh's favorite, her power exists only within those walls. Meanwhile, noble women outside the palace, daughters of generals, officials, or wealthy families, enjoy a different kind of freedom. They attend public festivals, appear at temple offerings, visit family estates along the Nile. They often manage lands, oversee harvests, and decide their children's marriages. They wear fine linen and gold, but these belong to them personally, unbound by royal decree. The deepest difference lies in self-ownership. A free noblewoman, though living in a patriarchal society, could bargain for her marriage, refuse a proposal if her family supported it, or choose to serve as a priestess in religious life. A consort, once inside the harem, could rarely leave. Her only exit was through Pharaoh's favor, usually by marriage to a loyal official, or waiting until his death when the harem dissolved or passed to his successor. In terms of power, the harem may seem passive on the surface, but it is actually a secret center of influence. A consort trusted by Pharaoh might sway appointments of officials, direct the flow of foreign gifts, or protect her family from disgrace. But that power is fragile, dependent on affection and trust, and can vanish overnight if rivals gain the upper hand. Free noblewomen's power, by contrast, ties to property and social networks. They may lose court status, but their lands remain, their families endure. Their power does not rest solely in one man's hands, but spreads through father, brother, husband, and son. If the harem is like a still, deep, and unpredictable lotus pond, the free nobility resembles a vast canal network, flowing around and connecting many sources of water. Consorts live in a world decorated down to the smallest detail, yet cannot leave it. Free noblewomen inhabit a less dazzling world, but can walk through many doors consorts only dream of. And though both groups live more lavishly than most Egyptians, each carries its own limits. The harem's limit is its walls. The free nobility's is the web of social expectations. No one is truly free, only held back by different ties. In the end, from a distance, you see, power, in any form, is a room with a door. The question is, does that door open outward or lock you inside? In modern imagination, the harem is often reduced to images of fragrant chambers, sheer curtains, and women waiting idly. But in ancient Egypt, the harem, especially the pharaoh's harem, was a sophisticated political structure where every person, every ritual, and even every piece of jewelry could carry diplomatic value. When a princess from Nubia, Mitanni, or the Hittites crossed the harem threshold, she was not merely a new wife of the pharaoh, she was a living treaty, a guarantee that two nations would maintain peace, at least for a generation. Lavish weddings with retinues, dowries, and gifts were not just for court spectacle. They were displays of power and wealth, recorded on papyrus and carved into temple walls for all to remember. Native Egyptian consorts also played political roles, though more discreetly. They might be daughters of powerful local families, high officials, priests, or generals. A girl chosen for the harem was like a sealed alliance. Her family's loyalty was assured, for such an honor not only raised status but secured political safety. A family with a daughter in the harem was rarely suspected of betrayal, since any act against the pharaoh risked punishment for kin within the palace walls. The harem was also a stage for soft diplomacy. When foreign delegations visited the court, they were sometimes invited to witness banquets or festivals where some consorts performed singing, dancing, or music. This was not mere entertainment. It conveyed that Egypt's strength lay not only in its military and economy but also in its refined culture, embodied by the grace of women in the harem. Moreover, the most powerful women in the harem, such as the queen or the pharaoh's mother, often served as advisors. On matters of diplomatic marriage, they might suggest choices that would bolster Egypt's position or warn against alliances fraught with risks. Of course, political power within the harem came with endless intrigue and rivalry. Every new alliance, every new bride, shifted the balance within the court. A foreign princess might bring a loyal retinue, and their presence sometimes sparked hidden factional conflicts. The harem became a microcosm of the entire court, where relationships, whether intimate or distant, bore political significance. From outside, everything seemed to unfold in silence, accompanied only by music, laughter, and the scent of resin. But beneath the velvet and silk lay threads binding nation to nation, family to throne, and individual fates to a political machine far larger than themselves. Perhaps the most subtle aspect was how the harem reinforced the court's stability through its very separation. These women did not appear publicly, nor engage in open political debate. Thus, their influence was hard to detect and harder to attack. The harem was like a soft wall, invisible in its push, but slowing every collision, turning threats into negotiable matters, at least until the quiet calculations within found a way to break free. In the world of the harem, time does not flow as steadily as it does outside. It moves faster. A year beyond those walls might be but a fleeting moment in a lifetime. Yet inside the harem, each rainy season, each rising of the Nile, is a merciless measure. A consort entering the harem is often at the peak of youth and beauty. Bright eyes, taut skin, graceful steps. But in ancient Egypt, such beauty was not merely innate. It had to be nurtured with natron for cleansing, fragrant oils to nourish the hair, and hours spent practicing posture, sitting and standing. When favored by the pharaoh, all these were readily provided. Servants brought fresh lotus, new boxes of coal, and gleaming bowls of almond oil. Eyes turned toward her with respect, or at least wary attention. But then, like an irreversible law, the pharaoh's attention shifts. Perhaps a younger consort arrives. Perhaps a new political alliance demands favor for a foreign princess. Or simply, the heart that once fell so easily into enchantment grows weary. When this happens, the seat nearest the throne is replaced by one further back at feasts. Private conversations become mere polite nods. This process is quiet but unmistakable. Her old servants are reassigned to other consorts. New jewelry appears less frequently. Even the scented oils she once used become scarce, as if that very fragrance knows its time has passed. Aging in the harem is more than just years passing. It is the fading of influence, of voice. Once unnoticed by the pharaoh, her counsel, no matter how wise, finds fewer ears. Friends grow cautious around her, for no one wishes to be caught in the shadow of a fallen favor. The fate of a consort after disgrace takes many paths. Some are married off to high officials, a gift from Pharaoh, both reward and means to keep secrets she once held. Some retire to small estates in the countryside, living out quiet days in obscurity. Others remain within the harem as shadows, witnessing new generations of consorts pass through, fully aware of how the game ends, yet powerless to intervene. Ironically, a once fallen consort may be summoned back near the throne, not out of love, but familiarity. As the pharaoh ages, he may seek comfort in familiar faces, though it is a cold comfort, no longer carrying promise for the future. Their final years often mark a shrinking world, from a bright private chamber to a smaller room, from garden walks to a narrow courtyard. There, they become silent witnesses to court history, knowing secrets that will never be carved in stone. And then, one day, when she passes, the funeral takes place quietly within the harem, without public record. What remains are a few buried possessions: an ivory comb, an empty oil vial, bracelets dulled with time. Enough for an archaeologist millennia later to find and guess that this woman once lived in luxury. But no one knows how close she once sat to the throne, or how deeply she once loved, because in the harem nothing lasts forever except the walls, and even those walls will crumble with time. The ancient Egyptian harem was guarded not only by high walls and locked doors, it was sealed by invisible forces, unspoken rules of silence that everyone inside understood, though none ever wrote down. From the very first day a new consort stepped inside, she learned not only how to walk lightly or hold a cup of wine without spilling a drop. She learned how to swallow her questions, how to smile when she knew what she had just heard could change a family's fate, how to hide any trace on her face that she had witnessed something unusual, an unspoken law, never voiced but universally known. What happens in the harem never leaves the harem. Servants, musicians, tailors, even the gardeners tending lotus bushes in the courtyard shared the same binding. If a rumor escaped, the whole chain could be punished. And such punishment rarely required a pharaoh's command. It was enforced by the internal system itself, a self-protective mechanism. Information flowed in hidden streams, from a servant's ear to a consort's, from whispered words between friends to exchanged glances at a banquet. But every current had invisible dams. Certain topics were never touched: the pharaoh's true health, rivalries among princes, secret meetings with foreign envoys. Anyone who stumbled upon them found themselves isolated. No more morning greetings, no companion at meals. There was another kind of silence, more subtle. Silence to hold power. A powerful consort sometimes knew more than she revealed. Keeping quiet meant keeping advantage, so that when the moment came, a single, well-placed word could tip the balance of the entire harem. Alongside this, there were unspoken codes of conduct. Never enter another's chamber uninvited, even if the door stood open. Never look directly at a private conversation between the pharaoh and another consort, as if that moment did not exist. Never wear colors or jewelry associated with another's rank unless given permission. It was these rules, combined with silence, that formed a firm order. No need for many guards, no need for interrogation, yet the harem maintained secrecy like a fortress. Outsiders often mistook that silence for peace, but within it was constant pressure to remember where one stood, who was watching, and what might happen if a word crossed a boundary. A small story leaking out could become proof of conspiracy. A glance at the wrong moment could be read as betrayal. And after living long enough in that atmosphere, silence became habit. Even when leaving the harem, through marriage or retirement to the countryside, many women kept that habit. They did not speak of what they had seen, nor mention those who once shared a roof with them, as if that chapter of life was a secret buried with the walls, and they had become part of those walls themselves. Perhaps this is what made the ancient Egyptian harem one of the most impenetrable structures of power in history. It was guarded not only by stone, but by consensual silence, a soft chain that could never be broken. You are still here. Having passed through a day in the ancient Egyptian harem, you woke before dawn, sat silently as servants examined every detail of your skin, your posture. You endured the ritual bath scented with lotus, almond oil rubbed in, hours spent as another's hands traced every line of kohl around your eyes. You sat through a breakfast, sweet yet cold as stone, reading the meaning in every smile, every glance. You learned to become part of the scenery, sitting still like a living statue, strumming a harp, or holding up a lotus flower just to remind someone that you are still here, still worth seeing. You have seen Tiye rise from a common girl to queen, wielding intelligence to guide the currents of power behind the curtain. You have walked the stone corridors, entered rooms holding archaeological secrets, heard whispers of the harem conspiracy, and plots that live only in murmurs. You have understood layers of symbolism, lotus as rebirth, fragrance as prayer, gold as the sun, and legends no one dares confirm. You have compared your place to the free noblewomen outside, realizing you are a pawn in a political game, a gift exchanged for peace. You have witnessed the fate of those once favored, stripped by time and power of everything. You have learned silence, learned unspoken laws to survive. And now, as the sun sets and the oil lamps burn low, you remain intact. Not fallen from grace, not caught in conspiracy, not forgotten. You have survived, but ask yourself, is this truly living? In this chamber, you are surrounded by gold, silk, the scent of flowers. There is no lack of food, no lack of servants. But every door is guarded, every corridor leads to a place you know by heart. There is no path to the Nile without permission. No wide sky outside, and only a square frame through a window. You are part of these walls, and these walls are part of you. Freedom is not among the gifts the Pharaoh grants. Luxury and captivity coexist here, so intertwined that sometimes you forget they are not one. Perhaps those outside dream of your place. They see gold, silk, feasts, and think, worth it. But they will not hear the silence at night, the guards' footsteps echoing down the halls, nor the moment you realize you no longer remember the last time you chose your own path. And as you lie down, the last flicker of the oil lamp fades to dark, the question remains. Is living in luxury but trapped truly a dream to chase? Or is it merely a gilded cage, admired by those outside, learned to be smiled through by those within? And that was the quiet story of life behind the walls of ancient Egypt's harems, where survival meant beauty, silence, and obedience. From the lonely routines of concubines to the legacy of Queen Tiye, from conspiracies that shook pharaohs to the unspoken rules that shaped destinies, history reminds us that luxury can also be a prison. Thank you for spending this long, calm journey with the sleepy historian on Historian Sleepy 365. If this story helped you relax or drift into sleep, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment about where you're listening from, and share this boring history for sleep with others who need rest. Now let the echoes of the Nile fade into silence, and may your night be as calm as the desert sky. Sweet dreams.